Today we're going to be making two different types of pies. One is an old-fashioned sweet potato pie, and the other is a cranberry apple pie with some modifications since we don't have all the ingredients. One of the things in the cranberry apple pie is a can of cranberry sauce. We don't have cranberry sauce out of the can, we have something better, and that is fresh cranberries. And if you'll come this way, you can see that these have been prepared. We used 2/3 a cup of brown sugar, 1/3 a cup of white sugar, and 3/4 a cup of orange juice. And we're going to let this simmer for about 15 to 20 minutes on medium-high heat until about half the liquid's gone and the cranberries have popped open. Then we'll let that cool before putting it into our pie. The next thing we're going to do is make the crust. Now we have a recipe for crust that uses shortening instead of butter, and the shortening has been in the refrigerator because I've heard that having your butter or your shortening cold makes a better crust. So we have the dry ingredients already combined, and then the liquid ingredients already combined, and we're going to cut the shortening into the flour. We also have Samuel here to help in the kitchen. We're going to cut the shortening into the flour mixture, and you can use 2 knives to cut it in, or you can use this fantastic tool called a pastry blender. So I will go ahead and add all of this. Now you want it to resemble just coarse crumbs, and you know that that's good enough once you get it to that point. Do this kind of motion and work all of that shortening in. Now you can see we have a good consistency with our shortening and flour mixture. And now we add the wet ingredients. This recipe makes enough to make 2 pie crusts, or if you're making a pie with a bottom and top crust, this would be enough for that. We'll just mix this enough just so it all comes together in a ball. And then we're going to let it sit in the refrigerator for a little while we prepare our filling for the pies. Okay, so I got my hands in there and I formed it into a nice ball, and see how it all came together. And so now we'll just let it set in the fridge while we're doing the pie fillings. So the recipe calls for 2 cups of sweet potatoes cooked. This will probably make more than 2 cups, but we're going to go ahead and cook them all anyway, and the excess we can feed to Sam. And then the recipe for the cranberry apple pie, calls for 6 apples, but we only have 4, and we have different types of apples. This is a Honeycrisp, and these are Granny Smith, and so we're going to go ahead and make it even though we don't have quite as many apples as they call for. So if it doesn't turn out quite right, you have to blame the Food Network or allrecipes.com. You can blame me, but I'll put the link for these recipes down in the description below. The sweet potatoes are cooked. It ended up making about 3 cups. You can see that they were cubed and peeled before they were cooked. Here I've combined the ingredients for the filling for the sweet potato pie. We have sugar, cinnamon, nutmeg, a couple eggs, melted butter, and then also a little bit of salt. But also the recipe calls for either 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract or 1 to 2 tablespoons of bourbon. Kevin, should we use bourbon or vanilla? Or a little bit of both?
A little bit of both.
Okay. So we'll do 1 tablespoon of bourbon and I guess half a teaspoon of vanilla extract from Frankfort, Kentucky. together with a hand mixer. I'm going to use an immersion blender because it's new. I got it for Christmas and I've been wanting to use it, so we'll see how this works out. First you mix the ingredients and then you'll slowly add the milk. Now we're going to slowly add the milk while mixing. It looks very runny. Thank you, Sam. I hope it's not too runny. We'll see how it goes. The apples have been thinly sliced for the cranberry and apple pie and combined with the cranberry and the cranberry sauce and the other ingredients. And we've prepared the filling for the sweet potato pie. Now we're going to roll out the crust. So this is going to be enough to make 2 pie crusts, so we're going to roughly divide this in half. I have 2 sheets of wax paper down on the counter. The crust has been in the refrigerator. Okay. And I probably should have put a little flour down on the wax paper. It's not too late to put some down. And I have a very small rolling pin. I would recommend the larger one. This is all I have, and it helps to flour the rolling pin, and then you just want to slowly work the crust out, trying to keep it together, and you'll just work it out until it's the same diameter as your pie pan, or a little bit larger actually, so you're able to trim the crust and flute it. Okay, now we will transfer the crust to the pan. Peel off the wax paper gently. Down in the pan. Next we add our filling. So in this one I'm going to put the cranberry and apple filling. In this pie we're going to add the sweet potato filling. Give it one more stir before we put it in. And it looks like it's a perfect amount. I'm always worried about it running over, but has a little room to grow. We're going to trim and flute the crust. And the first thing you want to do is just take a butter knife and cut the crust off using the edge of the pie pan as your guide. We're going to save the crust scraps because we're going to put a nice cookie cutter crust on top of the apple cranberry pie. We have a snowman. Save the scraps. Now to flute, it's kind of a pushing and pinching. My crust was a little thin in some areas, so it's probably not going to look perfect. But my crust is falling apart, but if your crust is thicker, then you can get a better, see, that looks better there where the crust is thicker. I'm rolling out what's left of the crust, what we trimmed off the crust, so it can be snowman size. There we go. Now let's see if I can get them off wax paper. Alright. There he is. Now that's festive. So the oven is preheated to 350 degrees. And this pie says it should take about an hour. This one about 35 to 45 minutes. So we'll set the timer to check it at 30 minutes. Alright, bake well. 30 minutes have elapsed, and let's take a peek at our pies. Oh, they're beautiful. The sweet potato pie took a little bit longer than 45 minutes. I think it ended up being more like 47 minutes or so. But it's out of the oven and it looks delicious. There's some areas where the filling had came up onto the crust and it darkened up. But other than that, I think it turned out pretty well. And the other pie is still in the oven. I ended up pulling this one out about 8 minutes early. Some of the filling started to run over the edge, and the apples started to look a little brown, and the cranberry, it's a little brown on top, so maybe it did need a top crust. But I'm going to try a little of both and tell you what I think. I hope I've inspired you to make a pie. And if you do make a pie, share it with your neighbor, because that's a nice thing to do. Have a wonderful day. Today, we'll be making some pies. It's okay, just keep rolling. Okay. Hello, everybody. Okay, I got this. Stop it for just a second. Okay. Wow. I hope this sets up. So the Crisco container came with this, a pie and baking hotline. It doesn't specify hours, but we're going to call.
Use high-dollar bourbon. Or
thank you for calling with a live pie and baking expert, or choose from the following selections. And always remember, keep calm and bake on.
Keep calm and bake on. Get off the table, please.
With a complete recipe and how-to video for the classic Crisco pie crust. The following are tips to center outward with even pressure, lifting the rolling pin after each roll. Roll chilled.
Come on, crust. Oh, no. Oh, it's too thin. Oh, son of a gun. Ooh, I apologize for the dirtiness of my oven. How embarrassing. My cameraman fell asleep, so he doesn't get to eat pie tonight.
That's it?